Hello, everybody, and welcome to your weekly webinar from Squibbler. Today, we're going to be talking about a topic that comes up often. Our writers want to know how to adapt their novels or their stories to screenplays. So if you're new to the screenwriting genre, this is a brief tutorial to help you turn your book into a script. And in this webinar, you're going to learn the difference between books and scripts. They are very different in formats and goals. You're going to learn some of the challenges in adapting your book or your screenplay or your book or your short story into a screenplay. And you'll also learn some tips for adapting your book to screen. So if you are new to screenwriting, the screenplay format is very different from novels. It is not in paragraphs. It's got its own special formatting, and it generally has fewer pages than novels. It also limits exposition because everything is visual. So you're not going to have a lot of explanation, such as you would in a novel. It's going to rely more on dialogue and action. Let's take a look just so you have an idea of what these look like. This is a full screenplay that I asked Squibbler's AI to generate. And you're going to see here that it's not in paragraph format. You generally have a scene description, which is interior or exterior. You'll have a description of the setting. You'll have a description of who or what is going to be in the setting. And then your characters will be centered and your dialogue is going to be justified. So it is extremely different from what you see in novels. So that can be a challenge. Luckily, if you create a full screenplay with Squibbler, the formatting has already been completed for you. And the functionality tools in Squibbler's programming here will also help you to format your screenplay correctly. So we do have a lot of resources to share with you for familiarizing yourself with screenplays before you begin adapting your book. And this is always a great idea to get some ideas about what these look like and what some successful screenplays look like. The nice thing about screenplays is that you can write them and read them quite quickly. You might want to select the scripts for a movie that you know very well, so you get an idea of how the writing is going to translate to screen. It's going to also give you an idea of how much direction there is for actors. There is very little. It's the actor and the director who are going to do a lot of the decisions they make about how lines are delivered. So some of these resources are Drew's Scriptorama, and that's scriptorama.com. The Internet Movie Script Database, that's imsdb.com. The Script Lab, which is scriptlab.com. Simply Scripts, simplyscripts.com. And it may help you also, not just to read something you enjoy and know very well, but it might help you to read a film adaptation of a novel you know well. This could be something like the novel Jaws, and then you can watch the adaptation. It could be something like The Godfather. You know, that's also a novel that's been turned into a film. The Hobbit, Dracula. I mean, there are so many different interpretations of Bram Stoker's novel Dracula. So it'll give you an idea of what writers include in screenplays and what they leave out. Squibbler also has some resources for you to help you on your screenwriting journey. We do have a free webinar and worksheet packets to help you outline your script, get ready to write your script in either 3 or 5 act structures. And those are on our Squibbler server on Discord. So I want to show you what those look like so you have an idea of what the worksheets can help you accomplish. So as you're thinking about how you're going to write your worksheet, we do have, as I said here, some things that will help you organize your plot and your character development in the 5-act and 3-act structures. So these are uploaded into the resources library in the Discord server on Squibbler. And I'll try to remember to leave that link to the Discord server in the comments on YouTube for you. Let me go back to my, okay. So here are some of the challenges to adapting your novel. You do have to condense lengthy narratives. I mean, think about this. With something like The Lord of the Rings, which is a huge trilogy, it has to be condensed and adapted. And novels often contain hundreds of pages, while screenplays are typically only going to run 90 to 120, and they're not filling up the entire page either, as you saw in the formatting. This means that a significant amount of material from a book will need to be cut or condensed. And readers of Lord of the Rings know that entire characters like Tom Bombadil will be cut out of works as well. There is some professional insight here as well. Screenwriter William Goldman noted that novels are about what's going inside characters, while movies are all about what you can see and hear. We don't get much interiority with screenplays in the way that we do with novels. And this is going to highlight the need to distill the novel's essence while maintaining the core story. Another challenge is going to be translating internal thoughts to visuals. And novels can explore characters' inner thoughts and emotions through narration, but screenplays rely on dialogue, action, and visuals to convey the same information. It's a very different thing that you're writing. Writers often struggle to externalize internal monologues without resorting to excessive voiceover, because those can feel unnatural or overused in a film story. This can be challenging in adapting narrated stories where the first person perspective is important to the whole feel of the story. Something like Catcher in the Rye. If you have something like Catcher in the Rye, if you're going to adapt that book, all of the protagonist's thoughts are going to have to become dialogue and actions. It can't just be narrated, because we could listen to the audiobook if we were going to do that. Another challenge is choosing what you're going to include or omit. Writers have to decide which plot lines, characters, or subplots are essential to the story and which can be removed without losing the novel's essence. This is difficult when it's your own work that you have to adapt. Some professional insight here is from writer-director Akiva Goldsman, who adapted the novel A Beautiful Mind. He emphasized the difficulty of finding what's called the spine of the story, the core narrative that defines that adaptation. You really do have to have a strong understanding of what your movie is ultimately about. And if you need some help with that, it may help you to create a log line. And we do have a free webinar and worksheet to help you create a log line for your film or your screenplay as well in the Discord server. Another challenge is changing the pacing and structure. Novels have more time to experiment with pacing and structure, while film does not. And novels often have a slower pacing and multiple subplots, where screenplays are going to require tight 3-act or 5-act or 4-act structures with a clear beginning, middle, and end. Screenwriters have to reimagine the pacing to fit film conventions, so things are going to get cut out. They have to ensure that the story remains engaging for a 2-hour runtime. Another challenge is faithfulness and creativity. You do have to find a way to strike a balance between staying true to your source material and making creative changes to suit the medium of film. Fans of novels often criticize changes. This happens all the time. While filmmakers have to prioritize what works best for film, it's really going to help you to think of your book and your screenplay as two completely different mediums with different goals. Adaptations should be interpretations. They should honor the spirit of the original without being bound by it. Another challenge could be character development. Developing complex characters is limited in screenplays, and this can be difficult, especially when the novels provide extensive backstory and depth. Screenwriter John August, who wrote Big Fish, he adapted the novel to the film, stresses the importance of using dialogue and action efficiently to reveal character depth. And another recent film series that you can watch for this, if you want to compare, is Dune, looking at the adaptation from the sci-fi books Dune to the film adaptations. Check to see how much is cut, how much interiority is going to have to turn into dialogue and action. Another challenge can be audience expectations. And we talked a little bit about this already, but fans have preconceived notions about how the story and character should be depicted. This is going to create pressure on the character to meet those expectations. So writer Michael Green, who wrote the Blade Runner sequel, Blade Runner 2049, recommends treating the adaptation as its own work while you respect the novel's fan base. And I was thinking as I was working on this webinar about how Stephen King so famously disliked Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, but that film is celebrated and the script is celebrated despite Stephen King's reservations about the adaptation. Another challenge is genre and tone. The tone or style of a novel may not easily adapt or translate to film. For example, highly introspective or experimental writing styles can be difficult to adapt to a visual medium. A recent example of this is Gabriel Garcia Marquez's A Hundred Years of Solitude. Everybody that loves Marquez's work was very curious how a novel of that complexity over the time span was going to translate to film successfully. So if you're interested in seeing how that happens, you can check that movie out on Netflix. Screenwriter Gillian Flynn, who wrote Gone Girl, suggests that rethinking tone and narrative structure to suit the film's conventions while keeping the story's core themes intact. And again, with Gabriel Garcia Marquez's adaptation of 100 Years of Solitude, it's very apparent to me that the filmmakers definitely kept the tone of Marquez's book. So there are some hurdles for adaptations. One is that you want to be careful that you don't overload your screenplay with exposition. One way to do this with Scribbler's AI is to use the rewrite, show, not tell function. This is going to revise your writing, get rid of some unnecessary exposition. You also want to make sure that you do not lose the essence of the original story. Make sure you understand your theme. You can find that our Discord on worksheet and worksheet on theme in our Discord server. So this may help you as well. If you go ahead and work on that theme worksheet and you watch the webinar, you'll have a clear idea of the message that you want to express to the audience of film. Another big hurdle is trying to do the director's or actor's jobs. Screenplays have very little direction for actors. They don't expressly say what an actor should say or how he or she are going to deliver lines. So you have to be very careful with giving too much instruction to the actors or the director. So here are some places to start. You do want to read some scripts in your genre to get a feeling how they're structured and how they read. And this is actually really fun. One of the most recent screenplays I wrote was an adaptation of one of my own books, and it was horror. So I went ahead and read Hereditary's script again. It was, Hereditary is a very disturbing script, but it was really fun to see how that movie was written, even though I had already seen it. Another option is to read a famous novel or memoir nonfiction book to script adaptation, preferably one that has won the Oscar for Best Screenwriting Adaptation. And you can find the list of all the adapted screenplays on Wikipedia. You can look through Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay and then just choose one that you'd like to read. Another good place to start is to write your treatment. This is before you've written your screenplay or you're beginning your work on your screenplay. A film treatment is a detailed narrative. It's a document that's used in the filmmaking process. It's going to outline the story, the characters, and key events of a film or TV project. It's sort of like a blueprint for a screenplay, and it's going to provide a clear overview of the project. Working on this at the beginning to outline your work in treatment form is going to save you a lot of time and heartache when you're trying to adapt your novel to script. You do want to determine adaptability. Identify the core story, the themes, and the characters. Make sure those are crystal clear in your head. Evaluate what works visually and what doesn't. You can even test out parts of your treatment this way. Once you've written your treatment, go into Squibbler. You can use the visualize video function to see how a scene plays out because it will create brief videos for you. And some things just may not translate well. And this will help you to decide if it shows up in a visual medium. Another place to start off is with those plotting sheets from Squibbler with the 3-act and 5-act treatments and writing a treatment that will help you before you write. We do have a treatment worksheet and webinar in Squibbler's Discord channel as well. You want to decide what to keep, cut, and change. You want to condense subplots and minor characters. You can possibly cut them all out entirely, as with Tom Bombadil in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. You want to simplify timelines and locations as well. This is going to make it easier to get your script onto screen. Focus on your key elements. Think about your protagonist's journey and character arcs. And again, this is where those worksheets with your hero's journey, the character arc for your character and for your plot are really going to help you. If you're working on a documentary or memoir adaptation, you want to think about your overall message to the viewer as well. That should be very clear in your head. Here are some tips from the professionals. The big one that you hear all the time is show and don't tell. You need to translate the novel's internal monologues and descriptions into visual and auditory elements. There should be things that we see and hear. Use actions, setting, and dialogue to convey emotions and ideas. And again, we talked about using the rewrite, show, and don't tell function to limit exposition in Squibbler's AI. William Goldman, who wrote The Princess Bride, advises that movies are behavior. If the character is brave, show them doing something brave. Don't just have them say they are. There's also the kick the dog rule. If we want to show that someone is just a vile person, you show them doing something ugly, like kicking a dog. We'll get the idea just by seeing how they behave and by the words that they say. You also want to streamline. Streamline your narrative. Cut out any subplots, side characters, or lengthy backstories that don't directly serve the main plot. We can get a lot more of this in novels than we can in scripts. Films have a limited runtime, so every scene has to count. John August, who wrote Big Fish, says figure out what's essential. The movie can't contain everything from the book, and it shouldn't try. You also want to adjust the pacing and tone of the story to fit the cinematic format. Introduce key events earlier if necessary, so you don't have as much time to come up with your inciting incident on film as you do in novels. Keep the plot moving at a compelling pace. Writer-director Greta Gerwig, who directed Little Women and adapted Little Women, suggests that movies need to feel urgent. You got to find the emotional highs and structure around them, even if it means rewording events from the book. Another tip from the professionals is to create compelling visuals. Think about how scenes are going to look and feel on screen. Use imagery and action to bring the story to life in a way that captures the audience's attention. You really need to be able to visualize what you're writing, because if you can't, your readers will not see it as well, and your writers will not. Your viewers. Robert McKee, the author of Story, explains that cinema is a visual medium. So ask yourself, how do I show this instead of saying it? And that's the whole show, not tell aspect of writing screenplays as well. Another tip from professionals is to create focus on character arcs. Simplify and clarify your character arcs to ensure they're emotionally resonant and complete within the film's runtime. Show how characters grow or change in response to the events of the story. And again, the packets for 5-act and 3-act structure have this for you, so you can lay that out with your plot. The character arc goes with the plot in those worksheets. Screenwriter Eric Roth, who wrote Forrest Gump, emphasizes that audience connect with characters they can root for and relate to. Make sure their journeys feel authentic and satisfying, even if it means condensing or altering aspects of the book. And this is the second time we've seen a professional say that sometimes you will have to condense things or alter them. So just for fun, as we're getting close to winding down the end of this webinar, we do recommend, Squibbler recommends watching the 2012 film adaptation, which was written by Charlie Kaufman. Nick Cage, in this meta movie about writing, plays the role of writer Charlie Kaufman, detailing the screenwriter's struggle to adapt the nonfiction book, The Orchid Thief. He did not feel it was an adaptable work, so he wrote a screenplay about his own struggle to adapt a movie that is unadaptable. Kaufman actually went on to win the BAFTA Award for Best Adapted Screenplay, which is a fun example of situational irony. So there's just so much bundled up in watching this movie. If you haven't watched it, I recommend it. So in this webinar, we did review the differences between books and scripts briefly. We looked at some tips for adapting your book to screen, and we looked at some challenges in adapting novels to and memoirs to screenplays. Thanks, as always, for joining us. We enjoy having you here, and don't forget to check out all the resources on the Discord Squibbler server. Bye, everyone.